Hello everybody, Jake your resident content cowboy here. Yeehaw, I'm live on stream for today's tier list. It's Monday. On Mondays, we do tier lists. And on Wednesdays, we wear pink. Today, we are doing a tier list for newer players entering the game. Whether you're newer or you're still climbing the rank, these are going to be Pokemon that I think are very, very good for you at that stage of the game. And I have my chat here with me on TikTok and Twitch right now so that we can all kind of discuss these together. Let's take a look at our tiers this week. We have our God tier. We're just going to put one Pokemon in our God tier as always. We're not friggin' Norse around here. We've got our S tier, the So Easy tier. These are great Pokemon for new players, like top of the tops. We have our A tier, the and smooth ride tier. Don't know why I spelled it like that. A smooth ride tier. We have our B tier. Yeah, so still got the B tier. We have our C tier, the Cameron I'd stay away tier, and then we have our D tier, our Decidueye Memorial tier, a tier named after Decidueye when it was terrible. Now Decidueye is not so terrible, but we still have the tier named after Decidueye. All right, so again, this tier list is about Pokemon that I think are good for newer players, players learning to climb inside of Pokemon Unite. The higher they are on our tier list, the better they are for newer players. Where to begin? What class should we begin with? Let's see. Someone said Zeraora is God tier. You know what? Let's start with our Speedsters right now. Speedsters are an interesting bunch here. We don't have a ton of them in Pokemon Unite, and in general, they are very high skill ceiling Pokemon. I think we got all of them right there, right? I'm gonna put Scyther here as well. Scyther is essentially a speedster, even though it is split from the all-rounder tree there with Scissor, but Scyther has all speedster stats. It's essentially a speedster. Oh, did I miss Dodrio? Where you at, buddy? There you are. Oh my gosh, it's got 3 hats. Okay, so let's take a look at our speedsters right here. In general, speedsters are not ideal for newer players. They are very, very difficult to learn and use, and while you're already trying to figure out the fundamentals of the game, I think playing a class like this is pretty tough. I'm trying to think if there are any that are much higher than C or D tier, and I don't really think there are. You know, they say Talonflame is a novice Pokemon, and I would highly disagree with that. Maybe the easiest one to play is possibly Scyther. Scyther might be the easiest one out of this entire bunch to play right now, but I think all of these are quite difficult, honestly, for newer players. Dodrio and Zoroark immediately go to the Decidueye Memorial tier for me. These Pokemon are amazing, but they are so hard to use for newer players. They're just so incredibly tough. The chat's saying hardest is Zoroark. That's possible. It's Zoroark or Dodrio, one of the two. But I mean, look at the rest of these. I think if we're just kind of judging them against each other, maybe Zoroark. Now, Zoroark's leveling is so bad. Or sorry, Zeraora. Called it Zoroark. Zeraora's leveling is so bad. Honestly, it might be the most, in some ways, it's the most difficult speedster because you're just so far behind all game. These are really tough Pokemon for newer players. I'm going to put this one down here into the D tier. I'm going to put Scyther into my C tier. Maybe Talon as well. Boy, Absol. Absol's a really tough one. And Gengar might even be just as hard. It's tough because Gengar is really good against weak players, right? But at the same time, Gengar is really tough to use and really rough in this current meta. The most recent Pokemon to release inside the game is Chandelure for anyone watching this video sometime in the future. Boy, this is just so hard. Honestly, all of these speedsters are so hard. Coming from the chat, Zeraora is an odd spot regarding leveling up despite not having high Evo levels. Yeah, that's true. That's very, very true. Speedsters needs high skill ceiling and more time to practice. I think at best you could say that they're C tier. These are very difficult Pokemon. In general, I would stay away from them. We have a little bit of a Firebird B in the chat. I don't know. I know the game says Talon is novice, but its Unite move is really hard to land. to find use out of this Pokemon, I find it very difficult for a newer player to get a ton of value out of any of these speedsters inside of Pokemon Unite. If I had to give my recommendation, I would say stay away from speedsters in general when you first get to the game. But, you know, I understand that there are a lot of really exciting Pokemon, right? So I get it. How new do I mean by newer, asked the chat. I would say, I mean, anything up until you're kind of more consistently in Masters is probably a tough time to be playing the Speedster class, but you could start using it as you need to get used to the macro of the game, for sure. You have to get used to macro. And just knowing where to go inside of a match of Pokemon Unite, really, before you're trying to figure out how to land your drill pecks and jump kicks consistently. Let's move on over to another class here. What do we want to do after Speedsters? What would be an interesting one here? Maybe, you know what? We kind of have an all-rounder that popped in here. So let's go ahead and do the all-rounders right now. I'm going to try to lay them all out. Might not be easiest to lay them all out. I did that with speedsters, but maybe it's a mistake. I'm just going to try to move them all down here so I can see them easier, and then we'll start discussing all-rounders. Let's start with our all-rounders. We already talked about Scyther, which is sort of the split Evo. You have the Scissor, the Scyther. I think Scissor is probably mid, probably a B tier. You kind of juggle your moves pretty easily. Bullet Punch is easy to land. It's not too difficult to control that at all. I think the only thing tough about Scissor in general is it just doesn't play particularly well inside of this meta. But as a Pokemon to learn, actually this might even be closer to A for newer players. I just think the Pokemon is not great right now, but I do think there's actually some value to it for newer players. It's easy. It's like a really easy one to use, right? Buzzwole. I have to put Buzzwole all the way down into the D tier. I think Buzzwole is one of the harder Pokemon in the game to get great value out of. Really high skill ceiling, really tough for newer players. He looks cool, but man, you are just going to be, I think you're going to be in trouble with Buzzwole. Early game might go okay, but late game as a new player with Buzzwole feels like a bit of a nightmare, I have to be honest. I think that could be a really, really tough situation for our newer players. Let's see. Another one that would be very tough is Tyranitar. Tyranitar's leveling is brutal. I think Tyranitar is either C or D. I'd say maybe C for Tyranitar. The only thing about Tyranitar that's a saving grace is when you're playing against newer players, you can get into more situations where you're kind of standing around them doing damage, and Tyranitar is extremely bulky. That being said, it's really hard to get value out of this Pokemon because it needs so much experience to get good, and I've noticed that a lot of newer players don't spend enough time getting experience, or they exclusively farm wild Pokemon and they don't do any of the other objectives inside of a match. Mechanically, it might not be as hard as Buzzwole, but it's definitely tough to get value out of a Pokemon like Tyranitar for a newer player, I would say. Azumarill is an A, maybe even an S tier. Azumarill's really good, I think. Azumarill's really good for new players. Evolves at 4. The only thing that's tough about it is understanding its critical hit situation, but this one actually might be one of the S tier Pokemon here. We're getting S in the chat as well. This is maybe one of the better Pokemon for newer players. It's not really tough, honestly. It seems like a pub stomper. Yeah, a lot of people in the chat saying S. I think I'm in agreement with you. It's really strong. It's a really strong Pokemon for new players, especially now that it evolves at 4. I really think, especially that it evolves at 4 now, it's very, very strong for new players. I'm gonna go with the chat here as well. I was leaning either S or A, and I think it's very good for new people, for sure. For sure. Let's move on to Machamp. Machamp, I think, is either B or A, maybe even A. The thing about Machamp is, if you miss its Unite, it's terrible, but it's actually pretty good in Path. Maybe it's similar to Scissor. A lot of the chat's saying B. I'm seeing a lot of B's from the chat. I could see that. It's close. It's teetering for me. I could agree that it's maybe a B tier choice. I could see that for sure. I think the big thing with Machamp is it's a 2-stage evolution. Anytime there's a 2-stage evolution, that's going to be hard for newer players because you just need to farm. You need to get lots of XP. Let's see. Who do we want to do next? All right. Charizard. I think Charizard's an A. Now this is crazy because Charizard's also a 3-stage Evo, but Charizard for a new player, at least once you get your Unite move, it's an easy time being very, very useful for your squad. It has one of the easiest Unites in the game outside of it getting canceled, but in newer games, you don't have to worry about that as much. And I think you'll just have a much better time than some of these Pokemon with Charizard's Unite move. I just think it's easy to walk around the battlefield pressing A and burning everything down. The thing that keeps this out of the S tier is that it has multiple Evos, you know? Multiple Evos makes it really tough for newer players, I would say. Lucario, I would say C, probably for Lucario. It's not the easiest. I used to think it was maybe easier, but I had kind of an easy time with Lucario when the game first came out. But I've noticed a lot of players struggle with this Pokemon, especially this Extreme Speed build. Extreme Speed, D tier probably. That build is so hard. Power Up Punch, I think probably C tier. This is not one of the easier Pokemon to excel with inside of Pokemon Unite. A lot of the chat saying, ooh, we got some D in there. Let's see. Who do I want to do next? I'll do Zacian. It's S. It's one of the easiest Pokemon in the game to do well with. Even if you don't understand its mechanics. Even if you don't understand how its Eos Energy mechanic works, it's one of the easiest Pokemon in the game to do well with. It's a 1-stage evolution with insane stats, insane critical hit, insane everything. One of the easiest Pokemon to pick up inside the game. Now, you might not do that well with it because you're still learning the game, but it's one of the easiest Pokemon inside of Pokemon Unite. Especially once you understand even for a second the Eos Energy mechanic, it's over. I truly think it's crazy. For sure. Stop trying to make Zacian happen. Yeah, it's never going to happen. No one's ever going to play that thing. Garchomp. Garchomp is either B or C. I find Garchomp to be simpler than Tyranitar and Lucario here. I kind of feel like it's B. I mean, it's an auto attacker. You just spam the A button, really. It's tough. Its Unite aiming is weird. I have to agree with you there, Tiff. Its Unite aiming is not great. I think there are things keeping it out of the A tier for me. It's not the hardest Pokemon, but its Unite aiming is weird. The Dragon combo is weird. But I think a newer player just walking up to things and holding the A button, I think is really, really easy. I think it's easy for players to kind of get value out of Garchomp. It's not the hardest, for sure. Zacian is easy, but attracts the most abysmal players. I have to hard agree with you right there. Aegislash, D tier for sure. One of the toughest Pokemon in the game, Aegislash. You've got to learn, first off, you have to learn its early levels where you're very weak. Then you have to learn its switching between sword and shield form. I think that's just incredibly difficult. And to respond to Fred in the chat on TikTok, this is a tier list for how easy these Pokemon are for newer players to get the hang of. So anything in the D tier is like really stay away from these Pokemon. They're going to be very hard. Let's see. I'm wondering where to put these two. So Dark Bear, I feel like is maybe C. Dark Bear, I feel like is harder than Water Bear. But both of them struggle a lot until they get level 5. That's one of the biggest things with this. So Dark Bear is tougher to use, which is actually this one. Water Bear is easier to use, but both are like really, really level gated early. They're just like, yeah, I put water lower. That was a mistake. Yeah, they're both, I don't know. Water Bear falls in late game. Yeah, but for a newer player, that's not really the most relevant, I think. I think newer players, I think they would just do well with like, even if they didn't even if they didn't, you know, have that much impact late. Both in D, says the chat. Level management just keeps this Pokemon difficult for newer players. I could see an argument to move both of them down a tier, maybe. They are not the easiest Pokemon for sure. They're not the easiest. I think Water Bear is easier though. I think the Rapid Strike style Urshifu is easier. So if I had to differentiate the two, it would be something like this. The cooldown on Water Bear is hard to figure out. I can't disagree. I mean, you guys might be convincing me to put both of them down into the D tier. They are tougher Pokemon to learn. We got a few more all-rounders here. Dragonite. Dragonite feels C to me. I was gonna say B, and I think the thing that keeps it away from B is the Outrage build. I think Outrage is pretty tricky for newer players, honestly. I think Outrage, for me, keeps it in the C tier. Maybe if you're just playing Dragon Dance, Hyper Beam, that could be B. But in general, like overall, also its Unite move is bad, honestly. Its Unite move used to be a lot better. I think Dragonite's Unite move is one of the hardest to get value out of. It's so telegraphed. Enemies, you know, it's hard to land on any enemies. You think you want to jump across the map with it, but you often don't. It's just it's a tough Unite move, I think. I'm going to keep it C tier. I don't think it's amazing for new players. Now the real question is, how low does Zarina go? Zarina is rough, guys. I mean, Zarina might be D. That could be one of the hardest Pokemon for new players. The comboing on this Pokemon is like, yeah, bottom of D. The comboing of Zarina is really tough, I think, for new players. You're just going to be so far behind figuring this Pokemon out, and it's recently gotten some nerfs that make it even harder to play. I feel like this is one of the toughest ones for sure. Just one of the hardest ones to get a lot of value out of for new players. So I'm going to put that one down into the D tier. That being said, if you're awesome with Zarina, it's really cool. It's just one of the hardest ones. Let's see. Do we want to do supporters or defenders next? Supporters or defenders? Maybe we'll do defenders. Try to get all my defenders in a row here. Let's talk about these tanks in Pokemon Unite. Okay. A lot of the defenders are amazing inside of Pokemon Unite, and some of them are quite hard to use, I think. Snorlax, I would say, is probably a C tier Pokemon for new players. The thing about Snorlax is it's an amazing tank, but I think upon first playing it, you won't find a lot of value for your team. Heavy Slam and Block are incredible, but until you understand how to position as a tank and how to move around, I think you're just going to be sort of jumping into the enemy backline and getting KO'd. Then the other option is you're playing Flail, and then you're not really giving the team a super solid defender. It's also, as the chat's saying, not fun for solo. I got to agree with that too. It's hard for solo, especially for newer players. I don't think Snorlax is a super great choice for new players. Let me tell you a choice that is super great for new players. Slowbro. Slowbro is an S tier choice, I think, for newer players. It's so good. It's so strong. It's so easy to use. Its early move has like the best secure inside the game. Surf is good. Scald is good. So either way you go, I think Slowbro is amazing. Yeah, laughably easy, says the chat. I think it's S tier for sure. And they give it to you for free. It's one of the nicest things the game does for newer players. They give it to you right away, and it's so incredibly good. One of the best defenders in the game, if not the best defender in the game, and super beginner friendly. Super beginner friendly. Yeah, telekinesis can be a little hard, and even amnesia might be a little confusing at first, but even if you don't get those moves down well, you're still super valuable as Slowbro. Slowbro's a great choice for new players. Let's see. Crustle. I'd say Crustal's probably C as well. It's a really weird one. It honestly might even be closer to D. The thing about Crustal is, I think for newer players, it's going to be hard to understand what you're doing with Crustal, right? It's not like Zarina hard or Aegislash hard, so I have to keep it out of the D tier, I think. Yeah, Rock Tomb can really troll your teammates. Honestly, Crustal might be D. Because your Shell Smash, you're not realizing you're losing all of your defenses, right? And then, oh man, honestly, it might be D tier. It might be one of the harder Pokemon for new players. Like, what are they going to do with it? What are they going to do that's really good? Maybe, I might still keep it C. I'm not sure, but I honestly, yeah, it is very hard to do well with. You're right. Dang, you're right. It moves fast, which is nice, right? Yeah, they Shell Smash. They think they're tanking or something. C because of leveling, maybe. Yeah, I think I'm going to keep it C. I think I'm going to keep it C. Mamoswine. Mamoswine is either B or A for me. Mamoswine's actually really good. It's good early. I think I'm gonna put Mamoswine A, and here's the reason I think I'm gonna put Mamoswine A. It's just by holding the attack button, you freeze people. Its early moves do good damage. Even if you get level gated, even if you don't evolve with this Pokemon, you still have a ton of value with it. It's great in Path. Yeah, I agree. I think I'm gonna put it A. It's actually a pretty solid defender for new players. It really is. It's not the hardest thing to learn. It's maybe not as good or as easy as some of the other defenders, but I think it's really solid. It's either A, like low A, high B, I think. A good defender for new players. Let's see what's next. Blastoise. It's tough. Blastoise is either B or C. Here's the thing with Blastoise. No Pokemon spends more time as its second evolution inside the entirety of Pokemon Unite than Blastoise. The level gating on Blastoise is so unbelievably tough. And new players get stuck as Wartortle for so long. Just so long. Wartortle is a prison, says the chat. I think I might keep it B. I think because it's ranged, I think players will get more out of Blastoise than they do with Snorlax Crustle. I do. But the XP is the problem. The experience it needs is a problem. It's either low B or high C. I might move it around once I put some other defenders up here. Trevenant. Okay, chat. Do you think Trevenant's A or S? It's really good right now. I think Trevenant's either A or S. It might be like top of A. It might not be SS, but S is really, I mean, it's an easy Pokemon to do well with. It really is. And it's good. It only has one evolution. We got a lot of A's in the chat. I was thinking top of A. Yeah, A plus almost. It's pretty easy. It's a really good one. Hard to mess up with. Yeah, it's not as easy as Slowbro, I agree. And it's nice to have some differential there, right? So I'm going to put it up in A tier, but Trevenant is just such a good defender inside the game right now. Woodhammer is the build, and it's really easy. As a new player, I vouch Trevenant for S, says Skull-Addict. Sorry, I'm getting your name wrong, but interesting. Okay. I don't know. I might move it up to S. It's very good. Goodra. I'd say Goodra's C, probably, for new players. Goodra might even be D. Goodra's hard. Goodra is level gated twice. It doesn't have strong crowd control. It's essentially melee. It's a hard one, honestly. Is it harder, though, than these other Pokemon? Yeah, it's bad early. That's its big problem. Because even Snorlax, while you might have trouble with it, it's not bad early. Goodra is bad early. Yeah. The Unite move's easy. I agree. Unite move is easy. It can't be below Tyranitar. Tyranitar feels harder. Yeah, these are kind of different roles, but I agree with you. I think I'm going to keep it in C. Not the easiest Pokemon, for sure. Goodra is a tough one. Greedent, D. One of the hardest Pokemon in the game. Greedent's one of the toughest Pokemon in the game to get value with. Greedent's just complex. Like, there's so many things going on with Greedent. It's D. I love Greedent. One of my favorites to play. New players, stay far away from Greedent. It is so tough. It's so tough, man. Yeah. Lapras. S? I mean, is Lapras just S? Lapras is insanely good. It's so hard to get KO'd with this Pokemon. You never get experience gated. Your Unite move is a little tough. I'll say your Unite move is a little tough with this Pokemon. Other than that, I think Lapras is so new player friendly. So new player friendly. This is how well these Pokemon do for new players. So that's what we're doing here. I think it's S. Yeah, S until nerf. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking. Wiggly. Wiggly's an interesting one. I actually think Wiggly is pretty easy for new players. I think Wiggly's a super solid choice for newer players. Wiggly's a supporter, but it's essentially a tank inside of Pokemon Unite. I think Wiggly's probably B or A. Low A, high B. Wiggly only has to evolve once. Yeah, that's true, as long as they don't pick Rollout. Maybe Rollout keeps it into the B tier, because Rollout's tough. But other than that, I think Wiggly is really easy to use. Like, really easy. But I'm going to keep it B, because I agree. Rollout can make it tough, but at the same time, this is an easy Pokemon to pick up and play. So it's kind of right in the realm here. And in some ways, just because it only levels once, it's kind of maybe even closer to A. I might even put it low A, honestly. I might put it low A, because it's pretty easy. It's easy to use. Cute Charm is easy. It's easy to secure with it. I'm going to put it low A. Honestly, I think it's a very solid one for newer players. We're going to do supporters next. Let me line up all my supporters here. Supporters are an interesting class in Pokemon Unite because they're extremely valuable, but also pretty beginner friendly, I would say, for the most part. Let's take a look at some of the most beginner friendly ones. Well, let's start with the one I have on top here, Mr. Mime. I think Mr. Mime is one of the hardest in the game as a support. I think it's one of the toughest ones. So maybe it could be C tier just because it does well in Path Early and doesn't evolve. I could kind of give you that, but in general, I think the mechanics of Mime are probably confusing for new players. I think confusion is... I think confusion is confusing. Thank you, guys. Good night, everybody. It was good doing this with you all. Good night. That's the end of it. There's no point to continue. Bye, everybody. See you later. Okay, so I think confusion is pretty confusing for new players. I'm gonna say D for Mr. Mime. Sableye? Sableye. It can't be higher than C, can it? But is it D? Is it that tough? It's just so confusing because you're like, what are you doing? I feel like maybe it's D. Because here's the thing. It might not be that confusing to figure out its moves, even though I kind of think it is, actually. You know what? No, it is confusing. The more I think about it, Sableye is hard, guys. I have to put Sableye into the D tier. As a new player, a Confuse Ray is confusing. Good night, everybody. Good night. Yeah, I think for new players, I think it has to be a D. It has to be a D. It's so tough. You don't understand like what you're doing with stealth. You don't know how to support the team. Honestly, I think it's D tier. I think it's one of the harder ones to use now that I think about it. Comfey. A tier? So listen to me here on this. Here's the thing. You'll attach to someone and you won't be doing anything. I think a new player will use Comfey and not understand what's happening in the game. And I actually think they would probably like drop off the, like if your first Pokemon was Comfey, I think you'd go, this game is boring and I don't get it. I could be wrong here. Here's the thing. It's basic, but it's also, it feels like it requires some knowledge of what else is happening in the game at times. Yeah, Comfey is C, too easy to do nothing. The thing is, it's easy, but yes, this is exactly what I'm trying to say, Polter, is it's easy, but it's hard to learn the game with this Pokemon. So you'll attach to someone, you won't even know if you're doing anything, you know? And like hop on, hop off. Maybe it's even closer to B. The basics, like once you understand what's happening, easy. But until you understand what's happening, I don't know if it's even that use. Like It's really interesting. And what if you're just Comfey and then you attach to your team's EXP share Wiggly and you just kind of walk around, you have no idea what's going on? I don't know. I actually don't think it's the easiest for new players. It's easy to attach and stuff like that, but I don't think you're gonna know what's happening inside of a match of Pokemon Unite. Eldegoss, S tier for me. S tier. Eldy is so good for new players. So good. It's ranged. It only evolves once. Its moves are on a decent cooldown. It feels like they're easy to understand for the most part. I think Eldy is S tier for sure. One of the best for new players, if not the best. I used Eldy new too. I think it's great. I think it's great for new players. Yeah, Pollen Puff, a little tricky, but I think it's great for new players. I really do. It's up there with all of these for sure. Yeah, no need to aim. You just hold A. It's really good. I think it's very solid. Another one that's very good, I wouldn't say it's S, but very good is Clefable. I think Clefable is, you know what, I'm going to put Blissey here as well. I think Blissey and Clefable are both really solid, like A tier choices for new players. The healing on it's pretty easy. The only issue is you're not doing any damage, and I think you might think you're frontlining or trying to hit enemies or something like that. Gravity could be actually a little confusing. So could sort of the Safeguard build on Blissey, which is maybe what keeps them both out of the S tier for me. However, I think they're really strong choices for new players. You know, if you're learning the game, I think Clefable, Blissey, very strong choices. You'll help your team out a lot. Hoopa. Is it D or is it C just because its early game is good? Because I can't tell if it's D or C. Everyone thinks D. Okay, that was my first thought, is D. We have a few C's in the chat. We do have a few C's. Here's the thing. I think its early game... God tier, how dare you. I think its early game is good, which is the only thing keeping it out of being absolute D tier with a bullet for me. Its early game is pretty good. But I think it's outside of that, man. I don't know. You need to learn hyperspace hold timing. See, maybe Hoopa Trick is relatively straightforward. I could give you Trick Hoopa. I could give you that, but I don't know. In general, I think this is one of the harder ones. The shield moveset is easier. The ult is easy to do damage. I think the ult... interesting. A lot of people are thinking possibly C. Do you think Hoopa is easier than Mr. Mime and Sableye? Or do you think it's kind of in the same realm as Mr. Mime and Sableye? I guess that's the question right now, is where does it land between those? Same? A lot of people think it's same. Same. Okay, then I have to say it's D. I have to. Because if it's around the same, I think those Pokemon are really tough for newer players. All right, let's move on to our attackers. Our final category in Pokemon Unite. Our attackers are usually a lot squishier than every other Pokemon in the game. They're good at dealing large damage at range. There's sort of a few different types of attackers. There's your auto attack damage Pokemon, your Cinderaces, your Greninjas. Then you've got your sort of mage Pokemon like Espeon, Delphox. And then you have sort of a weird hybrid. You've got kind of a support attacker and then a weird one, really weird one with Venusaur. So let's, all attackers are D, please don't play them. I mean, attackers aren't the easiest. So let's take a look here. Okay, here's one that's actually, I think, pretty easy. Pikachu. I think Pikachu's a good one for new players. Extreme range. Your moves are on low cooldowns. It's easy to do like damage with it, even if you're not doing anything super useful. It's easy to understand. Like the moves are basic. You put down a little bit of Thunderbolt and it's hitting a ton of enemies, or Thunder and it's hitting enemies there. D if you have the sound on. Volt Tackle is a little more complex, I would say, but it's pretty straightforward. Honestly, I might even move it to S tier. It's pretty good for new players. I think it's a really solid choice. It's easy to learn the game with it. I might even move it S. I think I'm going to. Yeah, I think it's a really strong choice for new players. I really do. It's good. My toddler cousin could play Pikachu. Well, there you go. That answers it. S because of the ult. Yeah, its Unite move's easy too, I would say. Yeah. Now we have I'm going to do the other support attacker that I think is harder, not the worst, but harder, would be Alolan Ninetales. I think Alolan Ninetales is further down for a few reasons. It's a little tough to understand the combo of Blizzard and Avalanche, and it's also a little tough to understand how Dazzling Gleam Aurora Veil works. I think because of all of that, it's a little lower. However, it's good early, and even if you just hold the A button with this Pokemon, you're still providing some value for your team. So I think it's probably a B tier choice. Maybe top of C. We'll have to see if some of the attackers make me think it's top of C. But I think it's probably a B tier choice. Let's see. Next one. You know what? This is a really strong one. Sylveon. I think Sylveon's either... Sylveon might even be S. Sylveon's really easy for new players. The only thing you have to worry about is getting level 4. And then this Pokemon's pretty dang easy to use. As soon as you hit level 4, you get Mystical Fire. It's an auto-targeting move. Or Hyper Voice. And I would say it's pretty straightforward. Yeah, I might even say S. It's really straightforward, this Pokemon. It's like, it's easier for sure than Glaceon or something like that. Because Glaceon, you have to manage all of the, you know, icicle shards around you. I'm thinking this is either A or S. It's really, I think it's a really simple one for new players. I would say, yeah, you can't move with the Hyper Voice thing. It also has a long time, a long cooldown on its Unite move. But in general, yeah, I think this is a pretty solid one. I'm going to keep it A for now. And yeah, Calm Mind could be a little weird too, right? Okay, let's do some more EVs here. I think Espeon's pretty solid, another A. I think the tough thing with Espeon's probably stored power. Honestly, I don't think it's as easy as Sylveon, but I think Psyshock, even if you're not any good at the game, you just click the button and I mean, it would just hit something for insane damage. I think Espeon, just because of how powerful it is right now too, it's probably good for new players. Psyshock, yeah, Future Sight makes Psyshock easier. That's true. That's true. You think Sword Power feels easier than Psyshock? Well, you know, one nice thing about it is you just tap it, right? The only tough thing is if you don't know what you're doing with it, you can just walk into the middle of everything and kind of do some damage and, you know, not do a ton. But yeah, I think Espeon's pretty solid. I think Glaceon's harder than the other two. I think Glaceon's B. I think Icicle Spear and, well, Icy Wind for sure. Icy Wind I think is the hardest out of all of the EV moves. I think Icy Wind is really hard compared to the rest of them. But you evolve at 4, you start to figure it out. Icicle Spear is the easiest part of this kit, I would say. And also you would have to know how these moves sort of like play well together. It's the hardest EV by a long ways. It's still not the toughest thing in the world, but I think it's the hardest EV for sure. Because imagine you start playing and you're like, oh, I want, you know, Icicle Spear and Freeze Dry, you know? Like, that's a bit of a problem. Yeah, and how to build up your spears and how to keep them stored. It's actually a little more complex than the other two for sure. Okay, let's move on to a weird one. Venusaur. I think Venusaur is probably, it's either A or B. It does have 2 evolutions. That's one of the problems. So here's the thing. I'm wondering, as a new player, are you going to understand the resets on Petal Dance? Are you going to understand that? Is that going to make any sense to you as a newer player? Like why this is happening, that this is happening? I think you're going to be kind of confused by that. I think you're going to play Solar Beam probably, which isn't the end of the world for a newer player. And yeah, I don't know. I think this is B. I don't think it's the hardest thing, but I honestly think you would be surprised. As a new player, I don't think you're going to understand some of these mechanics. The boosted auto provides value that many new players may not see. Yeah, that's true. The boosted auto is really good on this Pokemon. Really, really good. You think Venusaur's A, huh? Interesting. Venusaur isn't, it's not bad. It's not bad. But I don't know. I think it might be closer to B. I think it's a little more complex. Some of the things in the A tier here I think are a little easier, but you notice the reset instantly? Okay. Well, that's pretty good. All right, let's see. What's next? Who do we want to go? Let's go with our auto attackers. These are interesting. I'm trying to think what the easiest auto attacker is. I'm just going to set them all on our board really quick. Greninja, Cinderace, Decidueye, Duraludon, Dragapult. I'm not thinking that any of these are super easy. I think the hardest on this list is either Decidueye or Greninja. Greninja is hard because everybody, when they play this Pokemon, they think they're a ninja. You're not a ninja. They're also all, except for one, 3-stage, like 2, you have to evolve twice with them. Which is hard. That's just hard, you know? I think Greninja for new players is honestly maybe a D tier for me. I think Greninja might be really tough for new players. I would stay away from Greninja if I was a new player, honestly. Decidueye is kind of the same thing. I think Decidueye is really hard. It might be a little easier than Greninja, honestly, but I think Decidueye is a really tough one for newer players. I think a lot of the issue with Decidueye for new players is you don't know which move to use. Like, you don't, if you're using Spirit Shackle, you're like not sure how to charge it up. You're also so rough early. You've got to evolve twice. I don't know. I find it to be hard for new players, I would say. I think Dragapult is easier than both Greninja and Decidueye. I do. Not the easiest, but I think it's easier than both of them. However, Dragon Dance is pretty confusing, so I can't put it any higher than C tier. And Phantom, you know what? Honestly, it's not that easy to use. It's not. It's not that easy now that I'm thinking about it. They're both, like, both of its moves are not easy to get value. Oh, sorry, I just lowered that. Both of its moves are not easy to get value out of. They're really not. It's hard. Huh. Yeah, like the resets on it. I think this is actually kind of tough. It might be as tough as the others. Maybe it's slightly better. I don't know. Cinderace is probably B. It's probably B. Cinderace feels like the easiest one out of these besides Duraludon, which I'll talk about. They're still all pretty hard, honestly. You think C? I can't even really argue with you. It's still pretty tough, isn't it? It's a tough Pokemon to get a lot of value out of for a newer player. You think we got some Bs in the chat? It is the thing that's easy to. I think the thing that makes Cinderace easier than these others is there isn't anything that it's doing that I find to be incredibly confusing. You know, it's straightforward. Even if learning how to position and do well with it isn't the easy. Like, all of the auto attackers, you have to know how to position yourself. That's not easy. But in general, I think this one is one of the easier ones. So, Feint Attack is hard for sure. Now the question is, where do we put Duraludon? Because Duraludon, in some ways, is the easiest. It has the highest attack stat. It doesn't have to evolve. But people could play Flash Cannon. Tough build. People don't know how to use Dragon Pulse. Tough build. Its Unite move, however, feels like super easy. Like, so easy, its Unite move. Part of me is leaning A, and then part of me goes over to B. Like, its Unite move is like, it's brain dead. Unite move, you know? The movement is bad, I agree. The Unite can get interrupted. Super cancelable, you're right about that. I think Dur is the easiest to me. It's like Dur and Cinder are close to me. I could see a reality where they're both B. And the thing that like changes it for me, the thing that makes it hard is that people could play Flash Cannon and that Dragon Tail is a little tough. I think it's super easy to learn though. I think it's super easy to learn, but Flash Cannon and Dragon Pulse might be a little confusing for new players. In general, though, if you're going to be a new player picking up an AD carry, these fast attack damage Pokemon, I would say Duraludon or Cinderace are probably your easiest choices. Let's see. Now on to mages. Mages inside Pokemon Unite. Well, let's just start with Mew. I think Mew's an easy one. Mew's hard. You know? Mew used to be easier because it was just so easy to do crazy damage with it. You get amazing moves with Mew, but now, after all the nerfs especially, it's still a crazy good Pokemon, but I think Mew is incredibly hard for new players. Like, incredibly hard. Mew is not something I would recommend for a new player at all. Gardevoir. Gardy used to be really tough. It's still a little tough because it has to evolve multiple times. I think Guard's either B or C. The multiple evolutions make it difficult, but it's not. It doesn't feel like it's too tough to understand, right? You know, Psyshock, you get it, you aim it. Future Sight can be a little difficult. Yeah, Future Sight can be a little difficult, but in general, it doesn't feel that hard. I do feel like you're gonna have a tough time in Path early, which is not gonna be fun for newer players, but it feels like it's not too difficult to understand what you're doing. You're just a long-range mage. I think that's pretty simple, you know? I think B is a fair place to put it. Let's see. Dive Cram, or just Cram in general. D? I mean, where do you put Cram? Feels like you have to put Cram in the D tier. It's like one of the weirdest things in the game. It's so bizarre. I think it's D. And its mage build isn't even that good. The only thing that's great about Cram, no one has to evolve. Its Unite move makes a lot of sense. I think it's an easy to understand Unite move. And yeah, you get a move at level 4. However, outside of that, I think it's a very bizarre Pokemon. Like a very bizarre Pokemon to do well with. I really think so. So I have to put it into the D tier. Delphox. Delphox is... Delphox is B? It's kind of B. Fire Spin build's kind of A, honestly. Flame Charge Mystical Fire is hard to understand at first. I think it's in line with Gardevoir. I think newer players would gravitate towards Fire Spin. I could be wrong though. And I think now that the Flame Charge is easier to do damage with, I kind of feel like it's B tier. You do have to evolve multiple times, but it's an understandable mage Pokemon. I think it's understandable. I don't know. I see some people saying C, and I wouldn't disagree too hard. Newer players would not see the value in Flame Charge. You're probably right, which would make them play Fire Spin, which is a really easy move to get value out of, I think, for new players. I think B is kind of fair. Chandelure is an interesting one. Our final Pokemon, our most recent release. I'm just setting it in the God tier to talk about it. It's not God tier. Let's see. Evolves at 5. Boy, this is kind of a hard one. Overheat might be a little tricky, you know, and then you gotta play at extreme range for what is it, Flamethrower. I'm kind of thinking this is C, honestly. It might be harder than both Guard and Delphox, I think. And yeah, new players wouldn't understand the skills at all. I think you're kind of right. Oops, sorry, bumped my mic. I think I'm gonna put this C. I think it actually would be harder. Yeah, it has a terrible time farming as Litwick. I think it would be tough to learn this Pokemon for a new player. I really do. I think they'd have a hard time. Harder than Gardevoir and Delphox. I think they're just like confused. Yeah, and Overheat, you'd go, what is this? The positioning of Flamethrower also difficult because you get a lot of value out of 1 point. Yeah, I agree. I think, oh, it has that bug right now. I would say C tier for this Pokemon. So now the only question is, chat, what Pokemon makes it up into our God tier? I want to hear what you have to say. So if you're just joining us, this tier list is how easy it is for a new player to pick up this Pokemon and kind of do well. There are a few that I have my eye on. We got a few Pikachus in the chat. That's not bad. Bro, LD, Slowbro, Lapras, LD, Slowbro, interesting. Lapras I honestly think is really good. I do think Lapras is good. We got a lot of Slowbros. Got a lot of LDs. LD is really good, honestly. Anything in this S tier is pretty solid, I would say. I would say anything in this S tier is pretty solid. Lapras has no Evo. Pikachu has no Evo. Lapras is really good, I would say. LD is the easiest. LD is where my head goes as the easiest as well, is Eldegoss. But you know what? I honestly think, especially for providing value to your team, one of the easiest to learn, and I think the one I'm going to go with for this tier list, our god tier Pokemon for the tier list, is going to be Slowbro. I think Slowbro's insane. I don't think it's hard to learn at all. I think if you want to say there are others that tie, I agree with you. Pikachu, Eldegoss, Lapras, those are all up there. I think Slowbro, here's the other thing about Slowbro, is it's one of the hardest Pokemon in the game to KO. Even if the player's just walking around and they tap their Surf, they tap their Scald, it's one of the hardest things to get rid of in the game. So I feel like you're in fights longer, and because of that, you're doing so much more. Also, its Unite move is so easy. It's so easy to understand its Unite move. Even if you never use it, if you just tap the button, you see it and you go, oh, I get it. I use my Unite move and I hold somebody. Like, it's one of the easiest Unite moves to understand. Lapras is way harder. Eldegoss is pretty cool, but harder. I think Slowbro for me is going to be our god tier Pokemon here. So if you're a newer player, I hope this tier list helps out. I want to thank everybody in the chat for helping me make it. Here we go, a tier list for new players, how easy it is to understand these Pokemon. Anything up in the A and S and God tier are going to be super good choices for new players so that you can learn Pokemon Unite and not have such a frustrating time, even though you want to play Dodrio, you want to play Zoroark and Gengar. It would be a lot better for you when you're starting out to learn the game using the Pokemon in sort of those first 3 tiers there. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for listening. I love you very much. I'll see you all next time. We did it, guys. We did it.